please subscribe and share for more story. The Victorian home in Seattle's Queen and District felt nothing like a home that afternoon. It felt like a mausoleum. Miriam Hale stood by the tall bay window, watching the Pacific Northwest rain blur the world outside into streaks of green and gray. She was only 50, but the exhaustion of the past 2 years carved a heaviness into her bones that made her feel decades older. Behind her, the sharp rip of packing tape echoed through the foyer. The sound sliced through the silence, like a warning. It amazed her how 25 years of marriage could be packed into boxes in a single day. She turned slowly toward the man sealing a box marked office. Personal. Adrian Hale looked refreshed, strong, almost glowing. "You look at me like that, Miriam, and it makes this harder," Adrian said, not unkindly but with a cold detachment. "We agreed this is for the best." Miriam clasped her trembling hands. "No, Adrian. You decided. You decided the woman who held you through chemo, who slept in a chair for 6 months, who sold this house to buy your life back, no longer fit into your new world." Adrian's sigh was the kind people used when they were tired of explaining themselves. He lifted another box easily, too easily, Miriam thought. He acted like the man she met decades ago, not the fragile, trembling patient she kept alive when cancer tried to steal him. "This is exactly what I told Connor," Adrian said, adjusting his watch. "You're stuck in the past. Every time I look at you, I'm dragged back into sickness, into fear." He shook his head. "I need light, Miriam. I need a future." Miriam felt her heart crack, slowly but deliberately. "And Rena?" she asked quietly. The young marketing executive was everything Miriam was not, unscarred, new, untouched by suffering. Adrian didn't deny it. "She represents what's ahead for me." Miriam swallowed. "And what about Connor? Does our son think I'm a reminder of sickness too?" Adrian glanced at his watch again, the same watch she bought by emptying her retirement fund. "Connor understands transitions," Adrian said. "He'll be here soon to help load the gear." Right on cue, the heavy oak door swung open. Connor entered with a blast of cold air, shaking rain from his umbrella. At 26, he was almost a mirror of his father. Handsome, sharp, impatient. He didn't even look at Miriam at first. "Dad, the moving truck is double parked. We need to move fast," Connor said, grabbing a stack of books. "Connor," Miriam whispered. Not a scold. A plea. He paused finally, eyes settling on her with the distant courtesy one offers a stranger. "Mom," he said, "let's not turn this into drama." Dad explained. "You two grew apart." "It happens." "Grew apart," Miriam repeated softly. "Connor, I worked double shifts after selling this home. I haven't taken a vacation in 5 years. I haven't bought a new dress in 3. I rebuilt Dad's life and it's the martyrdom." Connor cut in. "It's heavy, Mom. Dad needs positivity. He's a survivor. He deserves happiness." The doorbell rang again. Rena Voss stood there, radiant in a beige trench coat, her smile bright and painfully genuine. "Ready, love?" she asked Adrian, leaning in to kiss his cheek. Then she gave Miriam a sympathetic look that somehow felt worse than anger. "I hope you understand," she said softly. "We truly wish you the best." The best. The words echoed in the hollow foyer long after they walked out into the rain. Miriam moved to the window in time to see her husband of 25 years and the son she had raised load boxes into a gleaming SUV and a moving truck. Not once did either look back. When the engines faded, the silence returned. Heavy, suffocating, absolute. It was then she noticed the envelope taped to the door. An eviction notice. 48 hours to leave the home she had once owned, because she'd sold it to save Adrian's life, signing a lease back that expired the moment he was cancer-free. The fall was slow and humiliating. Miriam's bank account held less than $2,000. Her nursing license had expired 2 years earlier, and hospitals were hesitant to hire someone her age with such a long gap. She moved into a cheap motel, paying per night, bleeding money she didn't have. She applied everywhere, caregiver, receptionist, cashier, but the rejections came quick and cold. Overqualified. "We chose a candidate better suited to our youthful culture." Eventually, the car went too, sold for scrap. On a cold November Tuesday, Miriam found herself standing on a downtown sidewalk with a rolling suitcase and $40 to her name. She was officially homeless. Shelters were full. The city overwhelmed. She spent days in public libraries for warmth and nights riding bus loops until drivers forced everyone off. And then the storm came, one of those infamous Pacific tempests that turned rain into violent walls of water. That night, shivering under a parking garage awning near the waterfront, Miriam heard a faint whimper. Not a dog. A child. Miriam cushed herself upright, her joints stiff from the cold. She followed the sound toward a row of overflowing dumpsters sheltered partially from the wind. There, curled into a shivering ball, was a little girl in a velvet dress soaked through by rain. Her patent shoes were muddy, and her teeth chattered violently. Miriam dropped her suitcase and knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "what are you doing out here?" The girl's wide eyes glimmered with fear and relief. I got lost," she whispered. "My balloon flew away, and I chased it. Then the people... I can't find my daddy." Miriam touched the child's hand. It was ice cold. The girl was slipping into early hypothermia. "Okay," Miriam said with steady urgency. "What's your name?" "Amara," the girl whispered. "Amara Sterling." Miriam swallowed. "Amara, my name is Miriam. We're going to get you warm, all right? I need you to trust me." The little girl nodded weakly. Miriam scooped her up. Amara was shockingly light, and abandoned her suitcase. She ran into the storm toward a small convenience store whose neon, open sign glowed like a lifeline. Miriam burst through the store doors, drenched and breathless, carrying Amara close to her chest. The teenage clerk looked up with irritation. "Hey, no loitering," he said. "You gotta buy something." "I am buying something," Miriam replied firmly. She grabbed a cup of instant soup, a bottle of water, and a cheap fleece travel blanket from the automotive aisle. When she reached the counter, the clerk rang it up lazily. "$9.50, he said. Miriam reached into her purse and pulled out her last $10 bill. "Keep the change," she murmured. She stripped off Amara's soaked coat and wrapped the girl in the thin fleece blanket, then prepared the soup using the clerk's hot water. She sat with Amara near the heater vent, gently lifting the steaming cup to the girl's lips. "Sip slowly," Miriam whispered. "It will warm you." For 4 long hours, Miriam kept the child awake with stories she invented on the spot, tales of storm-commanding princesses and dragons who breathed warm fire. Amara's shivering gradually eased, her tiny hands warming in Miriam's palms. "You're like a fairy godmother," Amara murmured. "But you look sad." Miriam smiled softly. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Tonight you're safe. And that makes me happy." Around 2 in the morning, the clerk grew restless. "Look, lady," he said, glancing at the security cameras, "my manager's coming at 3. You two can't stay." Miriam stood slowly, her body aching. "I need to call the police. This child is lost." She used the store's landline and explained the situation to the 911 operator. "Stay where you are," the operator instructed. "Units are en route." 20 minutes later, the quiet street outside erupted with lights. Not one police car, 3 black SUVs barreled into the intersection, blocking traffic. The store door flew open as men in tactical uniforms swept in, assessing threats. "Clear," one shouted. Then a man ran inside. He wore a soaked tuxedo, his face stricken with raw terror. "Amara," he cried, voice breaking. The girl sprang to life. "Daddy." She threw her arms around his neck. He sank to his knees, sobbing openly. Miriam stepped back instinctively, wanting to disappear. But the man rose, clutching his daughter, and looked at Miriam with fierce attention. "She said you saved her," he said, his voice thick. "You fed her, kept her warm. You held her for hours." "Anyone would have," Miriam whispered. But the man didn't look convinced. He stepped closer, studying her face with an intensity that made her heartbeat stumble. Then his expression shifted, recognition flaring like a struck match. "Your voice," he murmured. "That cadence. I know you." Miriam frowned. "Sir, I think you're mistaken. No, he said, stepping fully into the fluorescent light. 30 years ago. St. Jude's Hospital. Burn unit. I was the boy in room 402. Miriam's breath caught. She remembered, an 18-year-old with third-degree burns and no surviving family. A boy who tried more than once to remove his IVs, too numb to care whether he lived. Chancellor Sterling, Miriam whispered. The billionaire tech magnate. He nodded slowly, tears gathering again. You stayed past your shift every night for 3 months, he said. You held my hand through dressing changes. You told me scars were a map of where I'd been, not where I was going. You saved my life. Miriam blinked back stunned tears. You saved my daughter tonight, he said. She's all I have left. Miriam swayed, overwhelmed by exhaustion. Chancellor reached out and caught her arm. Where do you live? He asked. Shame flamed in her cheeks. I don't have a home. Chancellor didn't hesitate. He turned to his security team. Get her belongings. She's coming with us. Sir, one guard began cautiously. We don't. She is coming with us, Chancellor repeated, his voice a command forged from 20 years of leadership. No one argued again. And just like that, Miriam, who had been invisible hours earlier, was ushered into a warm SUV beside a little girl who now slept peacefully in her lap. Back at the Sterling estate, a sprawling mansion overlooking Puget Sound, Miriam was led to a guest suite larger than the motel room she'd lived in. But it wasn't the luxury that undid her. It was the safety. For the first time in months, she slept in a real bed, under a real roof, without fear of being asked to leave. She woke to the sound of Amara giggling and Chancellor thanking her with a sincerity that nearly broke her. Within weeks, Chancellor hired her as Director of Philanthropy for the Sterling Foundation. You know what families in crisis need better than anyone, he said. Miriam, hesitant but grateful, accepted. Not as charity, but as purpose. The more Miriam worked, the more she healed. She used her skills as a former nurse and caregiver to design programs for families battling illness, poverty, and displacement. She fought for every grant. She interviewed every applicant personally. The foundation flourished under her compassion and discipline. And slowly, Miriam began to find her footing again. Amara, lonely after losing her mother to cancer 3 years earlier, attached herself to Miriam completely. They baked bread, played games, read books late into the night. Miriam felt pieces of herself stitching back together each time Amara smiled up at her. The most unexpected change, however, was Chancellor. Beneath the public persona of a billionaire titan, he was gentle, thoughtful, hungry for genuine connection. They spent long evenings in the library discussing ethics, literature, and the strange, fragile nature of second chances. Miriam didn't realize she was smiling again until one night Amara giggled and said, Daddy, you look at Miss Miriam the way you look at coffee in the morning. Chancellor flushed. Miriam pretended not to hear. Nearly 1 year after the storm, the Sterling Foundation hosted its annual gala. It was the grandest event of the season, drawing philanthropists, politicians, and Seattle's elite. Miriam stood before a mirror wearing a midnight blue gown, smoothing the fabric nervously. The tired, broken woman from the convenience store was gone. The reflection staring back at her looked elegant, assured, alive. Chancellor appeared at the doorway in a tailored tuxedo. You look breathtaking, he said quietly. He handed her a velvet box. Inside was a delicate diamond pendant. A thank you, he said, for everything you've given this world. And my family. Miriam hesitated. I can't accept, please, Chancellor interrupted. It would honor me if you wore it tonight. She fastened the necklace and felt something warm bloom in her chest. They descended the grand staircase together while Amara skipped excitedly ahead in a pink poofy dress. Flashbulbs exploded when Chancellor Sterling entered with the mysterious woman at his side, Miriam Hale. The gala sparkled with music, champagne, and lively conversation. Miriam circulated gracefully beside Chancellor, thanking donors and sharing stories of families the foundation had helped. She felt confident, grounded, and, for the first time in years, proud of herself. Then someone tapped her shoulder. She turned, and the world tilted. Adrian and Connor stood there. They looked smaller somehow, frayed around the edges. Adrian's once healthy tan had faded to a fatigued gray, and Connor's sharp confidence was replaced with anxious uncertainty. "Miriam," Adrian whispered, as if seeing a ghost. "My God, is that really you?" Miriam straightened, her posture calm and unshaken. "Hello, Adrian." "Connor." Connor fumbled. "We saw the press release about your job at the foundation. We didn't believe it at first." Adrian stepped closer, ignoring personal boundaries as easily as he once ignored her sacrifices. "Miriam, we need to talk," he said. "Things haven't gone well. The firm took a hit. And Rena, she wasn't who I thought." Miriam blinked once. "I'm sorry to hear that." And she meant it, but only distantly. Their lives no longer held authority over her spirit. Adrian lowered his voice, attempting intimacy. "I made mistakes," he whispered. "We were good together. 25 years. We can't just throw that away. I'm willing to try again." Miriam let out a soft, disbelieving laugh, one that drew curious glances. "You are willing to forgive me?" she said. "Adrian, you left me homeless. You let me walk into the cold with nothing. You told everyone I was toxic." "Mom." Connor cut in, wearing his old charming smile. "Dad's been miserable. We miss you. We're family." Miriam's eyes sharpened. "Family?" A deep voice joined them. "Is this the family who abandoned her?" Chancellor stood beside Miriam, his presence towering. Adrian deflated instantly. "Mr. Sterling," he stammered, "this is private." "There is nothing private about cruelty," Chancellor said. "I know what happened. Every detail. You discarded her when she was no longer convenient." Adrian bristled. "Now see here." Miriam stepped forward, silencing him with calm strength.
"No."
"You see here." She turned to Connor first. "I loved you with every fiber of my being. I sacrificed my dreams to fund yours. And when I needed you, you called me a burden. You watched me disappear into the streets and didn't look back." Connor swallowed, his face paling. Miriam shifted her gaze to Adrian. "And you?" "I sold my security, my inheritance, and my future to buy your life back. I gave you everything, and you repaid me by discarding me like medical waste." "Miriam, please," Adrian whispered, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "I am not the woman you left," she said. "That woman died in the cold. The woman standing here owes you nothing. Not her time, not her sympathy, not her love." "But we're your family," Connor said weakly. Miriam looked at Chancellor beside her, then at Amara, who had run over to hold her hand. "Biology makes you relatives," she said. "Love makes you family. And I have found my family." Chancellor nodded to security. "Escort these gentlemen out." Security moved quickly and professionally. Adrian and Connor, suddenly aware of the crowd watching, attempted weak protests, but were escorted out into the night. Conversations hushed as guests pretended not to stare. Even in a room filled with billionaires, scandal still tasted electric. Miriam watched the two men who had once been her entire world disappear through the gilded doors. She waited for pain, guilt, something. But there was only clarity. Sweet, liberating clarity. Chancellor touched her elbow gently. "Are you all right?" he asked. For the first time in years, Miriam's smile felt genuine, reaching all the way to her eyes. "I'm better than all right," she said. "I'm free." They returned to the ballroom where guests welcomed her with warmth, admiration, and respect, not pity. When the gala finally wound down, the three of them, Chancellor, Amara, and Miriam, took a quiet walk along the terrace overlooking the tranquil bay. Amara held Miriam's hand tightly, swinging it back and forth. "Miss Miriam," she whispered, "Daddy smiles more because of you." Chancellor looked away, embarrassed. Miriam squeezed the child's hand. "Well, I smile more because of both of you," she said softly. After the guests left and the music faded into a distant hum, Miriam slipped out onto the terrace again. Rain drizzled lightly, washing the city in silver. She breathed in the cool air, clean, gentle, forgiving. She retrieved her phone and opened the photo the event photographer had sent her, a candid shot captured during the toasts. In it, Chancellor was laughing at something she said, looking at her with unmistakable tenderness. Amara was hugging her waist, beaming. And Miriam, she looked radiant. Alive. Reborn. She opened her old social media account and used for years. She posted the photo with a simple caption, "I once believed my worth was measured by how much I could suffer for others. But I've learned something beautiful. True love isn't self-sacrifice until you're empty. True love is finding people who help you become whole again. To anyone lost in the storm, hold on. Your family is out there. You just haven't met them yet." She clicked post, then set the phone down. She didn't need the world's approval anymore. Miriam walked back inside the warm, glowing house, the place she never expected to belong to. Amara ran to her instantly, wrapping her arms around Miriam's waist. "Are you staying up with us?" the little girl asked. "We're having warm cocoa." Miriam brushed her thumb over the child's cheek. "Of course," she said. Chancellor appeared in the doorway, holding 3 mugs. "I hope you like cinnamon," he said with a shy smile. They settled in the den by the fireplace, Amara curled between them, animatedly recounting her favorite moment from the gala. Miriam felt something unexpected, a sense of home that was deeper than walls or roofs. It was the feeling of being wanted, the feeling of being seen. Later, when Chancellor walked Miriam to her suite, he hesitated before saying goodnight. "You changed my life once," he said quietly, "and you've changed it again." Miriam's breath caught. "Chancellor?" "Good night, Miriam," he whispered, stepping back gently. But the spark in his eyes lingered long after he closed the door. Over the next few months, the bond between the 3 of them deepened in natural, unforced ways. Amara began asking Miriam to attend school events, soccer games, and bedtime story nights. At first, Miriam insisted it wasn't appropriate. "I'm not her mother," she told Chancellor. "No," he agreed. "But you're someone she loves." Miriam couldn't deny that truth. One evening, after a fundraiser meeting, Chancellor joined her on the balcony overlooking Puget Sound. "You know," he said, "I've spent years surrounded by people who want things from me, money, partnerships, influence. But you never wanted anything except dignity." Miriam hugged her elbows. "I just wanted to be seen again. And taken seriously." "You are," he said. "By everyone. Especially me." He looked out across the shimmering water. "Do you ever think about starting over?" Miriam didn't answer, but her heart did, beating faster, warmer. Spring arrived in Seattle with cherry blossoms drifting through the streets. The Foundation's new programs, designed by Miriam, were making headlines. Families wrote letters of gratitude. Hospitals praised her work. Donors admired her clarity and compassion. One afternoon, Chancellor found her reading a thank-you letter from a mother whose child had survived leukemia. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "This," Miriam whispered, "this feels like the life I was meant to have." Chancellor smiled. "It feels like the life you chose to have." Miriam looked up at him, startled by the truth in that. She was no longer a discarded wife or forgotten caregiver. She was a woman with power, purpose, and a future she had rebuilt with her own hands. "Miriam," Chancellor said gently, "I want you to stay in this family. Not because of gratitude, but because, well..." He hesitated. "Because I care for you." Miriam blinked. "You barely know me." Chancellor shook his head. "I've known your soul for 30 years. Before she could respond, Amara burst onto the balcony, waving a hand-drawn card. "Miss Miriam." "Daddy," she exclaimed. "Look, I drew us." The crayon drawing showed 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a bright sun, Amara in the middle, arms outstretched, smiling. Miriam felt her throat tighten. "Is this our family?" she asked quietly. Amara nodded energetically. "Of course. You're part of us now." Chancellor watched Miriam carefully. Her answer mattered, not just to him, but to his daughter. Miriam knelt and wrapped Amara in her arms. "Then I'm very honored," she whispered. Chancellor exhaled softly, something easing in his chest. For the first time, The possibility of love didn't frighten Miriam. It warmed her, gently, like spring sunlight on cold skin. But she wasn't ready to leap. Not yet. She needed to be whole on her own before she could belong to anyone else. Chancellor seemed to sense it. He offered no pressure, only patience. Summer brought long evenings, gentle sunsets, and the quiet rhythm of new beginnings. Miriam took long walks along the shoreline, learning to enjoy her own company again. She rebuilt her finances carefully, saved every paycheck, and even renewed her nursing license, not because she needed to, but because it reminded her she was capable. Chancellor and Amara often joined her for dinner, game nights, or movie marathons, but always with respect for her space. One night, after they returned from a charity event, Amara fell asleep on Miriam's shoulder in the car. Chancellor carried the child inside, then stood with Miriam at the entryway. "You know," he said, "you don't have to keep your distance. You're safe here." Miriam hesitated. "It's not distance," she whispered. "It's healing." He nodded. "Then heal. As long as you need. Just know we're here." For the first time, Miriam realized she believed him. Autumn arrived with crisp air and amber leaves. Miriam had become a respected public figure, celebrated for transforming the Sterling Foundation into one of the most impactful philanthropic networks in the region. Still, her past occasionally tried to resurface. Whispers from old acquaintances, requests for money, even a message from Connor asking for a conversation. She declined politely. The past was no longer her home. One evening, as she prepared for a televised interview, Chancellor entered the room nervously. "Miriam," he said, "I've been thinking for a long time. I want our lives to be intertwined. Not out of obligation or gratitude, but because I care deeply about you." Miriam's breath caught. Chancellor continued, "But if you never want anything more than friendship, I will accept that. Your peace comes first." Miriam's eyes softened. For the first time, the idea of loving someone again didn't feel risky. It felt possible. Miriam touched his arm gently. "Chancellor," she said, "I don't know what the future holds. But I know this. When I look at you and Amara, I don't feel fear. I feel hope." Chancellor's eyes glistened. "Then hope is enough," he murmured. From the doorway, Amara peeked in, grinning. "Are you two talking about mushy stuff?" she giggled. Miriam laughed, truly laughed, the sound ringing with freedom. "Go to bed, young lady," she teased. Amara darted off, leaving them smiling at each other. As Miriam stepped onto the balcony that evening, the city lights shimmered across the water. She looked out at Seattle, the place that broke her open but also rebuilt her. "I'm learning," she whispered to the night. "Learning how to live again. How to love again." And for the first time, she believed she deserved every new beginning rising in her path. Later that night, Miriam returned to the warm, glowing house where the two people who cared for her most waited just beyond the doorway. She closed the balcony door gently and walked back inside. Amara rushed toward her with a blanket, wrapping it around Miriam's shoulders. "You felt cold," the little girl said. Chancellor smiled softly from behind her. Miriam looked around, at the soft lights, the quiet hum of safety, the palpable feeling of belonging. She realized something profound. She was no longer surviving. She was living. And not just living but rising. "Ready for cocoa?" Chancellor asked. Miriam nodded, her heart full. As she followed them into the cozy den, she felt the last remnants of the storm inside her fade away. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't walking into uncertainty.